Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Hi there, Miss Kelly here with the Grimes Public Library. Welcome to Spring into Saturday. Today's activities are all about the breath. Did you know that the human body can survive for weeks without food, days without water, but only minutes without a breath? Our respiratory systems are the parts of our body that help us to breathe and keep us healthy. So today, first we're going to explore the anatomy and then the physiology of our respiratory systems. Those are fancy words for what are the parts and how do those parts work? Then we will look at how to make your very own lung model so that you can explore the structure and function or the anatomy and physiology of your lungs anytime you want with your own model. Let's get started.
Okay, friends, here we have our respiratory system. In the respiratory system, we have the upper system and the lower system. They are all connected. So when we are breathing, we take in oxygen in through our nose or our mouth if our nose is stuffed up. Scientists call oxygen O2 for short. And when we breathe out, we get rid of a waste product that we don't need as much of, and that is called carbon dioxide, or CO2 for short. All this blue area up here is all connected because our mouth and nose are connected. That's how important breathing is. We want to have two different airways just in case one is blocked. We have another one. The nose is the preferred way that we should be breathing because the nose helps filter the air and warms it, and also filters germs and dust out to protect our body. So down comes the oxygen through these blue areas into the lungs. The lungs down here at the bottom are these big pink structures in here. I want you to think of the lung not like a balloon that's filled with air, but more like a stuffed animal that has air pockets in it, but when you squish it, you can feel stuff inside of it too. So it's more like a sponge, less like a balloon that's filled with air. Notice that our lungs are protected by our rib cage and our sternum, which is the breastbone, and also the tailbone, the spine in the back. So all of these organs that are tucked inside our rib cage are really important, and that's why these bones help protect them and give us structure and protection. You will see right down here is the heart that's peeking out between the two lungs. And another really important structure I want to show you is this bright red structure down here. This is like an upside down bowl. It's actually a muscle, and it's called the diaphragm, and it's what helps us breathe. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But first, let's look at that upper respiratory system. Here's a close-up look at our mouth and nose again. And remember, we have oxygen coming in, and we have carbon dioxide coming out. And that air, as it's moving in and out, when we breathe in oxygen. When we breathe out carbon dioxide, is moving down through this open space, through the nose or the mouth. And then look, we've got two ways that it could go. Which pipe should it go through? We want the air to go through here. This is where we want the oxygen to come in. This is where we want the CO2 to come out. This front pipe is called the windpipe or the trachea. And the back pipe, this littler pipe in the back, is called our esophagus. This is where our food goes. So this pipe will go all the way down to our stomach, and that carries our food. Now, we don't want food getting into the windpipe, right? Because that's going to choke us. So how does our body protect us? We have a really cool little structure called the epiglottis. It's a door. So when we swallow our food, the tongue pushes down on the epiglottis, and it actually closes right over the top of our windpipe and closes the door so that the food only has one option to go down to the stomach and not down to the windpipe. Up next, we're going to take a closer look at the lower respiratory system. Once again, we have the oxygen coming up and down this trachea. This is the front tube, and into the branches. Let's take a close look at these lungs. They look like upside down tree branches. These are called our bronchioles, and the bronchioles are the branches that bring the air down into bronchioles, into these tiny little microscopic areas at the inside of our lungs. If I was to take this tiny little area and look at it underneath a microscope, you would see inside little air sacs. Now, this is where you can think of the tiny little balloons. These are microscopic little air sacs, and they are called alveoli. Let's take a close look. Here is what the alveoli look like up close. The alveoli are surrounded by blood vessels in this picture, and you can see here that we have some of the blood vessels are red and some are blue. Now, these are also very tiny blood vessels that are called capillaries. The red color represents the capillaries that have oxygen in the bloodstream, and the blue represents capillaries that have carbon dioxide, the waste product, in the bloodstream. So when our oxygen comes in, it's going to come down through these bronchioles down into the alveoli sacs, and then it can actually, because it's so tiny, it can actually move through from the sac into the blood vessels, the red part here, and it puts oxygen into our bloodstream. Then those blood vessels carry it back out all over to our body, anywhere that we need oxygen. For instance, if you are exercising and your muscles are working hard, like your arm muscle, see if I can get an arm muscle here with a fist. All right, that oxygen is going to be coming into this muscle. Now, when the muscle is done using the oxygen, it spits out carbon dioxide. Okay, and the carbon dioxide is carried by the blood back to the lungs, and all of this is happening every time we take a breath. So here comes the carbon dioxide down, and that carbon dioxide gets put back into these little sacs and then is carried back up through the lung and out when we exhale. So oxygen into the blood carries it to the muscles and all parts of our body. The body uses the oxygen, puts out the CO2, and the CO2 is sent back through the blood to the lungs and back out of the lungs and out of our body.
So now that we've seen some of those inside structures of our respiratory system, let's focus in on the diaphragm. Remember, the diaphragm is like a bowl. So if we take a bowl and we turn it upside down and stick it on the side of our body, this is about the right angle and shape where it would sit inside our tummies. It runs right up underneath our rib cage and tucks right up against our lungs. Now, the diaphragm is a very important muscle when it comes to breathing. The diaphragm can actually change shape when it's working. So the top of this bowl will actually come down a little bit and it'll flatten out into more like a plate. And then the bowl will come back up into its normal bowl shape when it's at rest. Let's take a look at how that works. When we breathe in, the diaphragm drops down like a plate. And when we breathe out, the diaphragm comes back up like a bowl. So breathing in, down. Breathing out, back up. Now, when our body does this, it creates an amazing air pressure system that helps us breathe most effectively. Let's take a closer look.
Here's how that pressure system works. We know that air always moves from a high pressure to a low pressure. when our diaphragm drops down as we breathe in, it creates more space inside our lung cavity. And we know that more space means low pressure. So now the air outside our body is higher than the air inside our body. So the oxygen will quickly come into our lungs. Now, when we exhale and that diaphragm goes back up, it's going to create less space inside our lung cavity. And less space makes a high air pressure inside our lungs. So now the air inside our lungs is higher than the air outside. And so, because air always moves from high to low, it's going to be pushed out of our bodies to the outside to expel the CO2. All right, so let's look at it all together. First, our diaphragm will drop down, creating that flat plate. This creates a low pressure system inside our lungs, which pulls the air in, down through our nose, down through the trachea, into our lungs, down to those microscopic air sacs or the alveoli, which exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide with our bloodstream. Then the carbon dioxide is pushed back out through the alveolar sacs, up through the lungs, up through the trachea, and back out the nose and mouth, because the diaphragm has moved back up, and that's creating a high pressure system inside our lungs, pushing the air back out.
And that's the story of breath. Next up is making our lung models. For these simple lung models, you're going to need an empty plastic bottle. It could be a water bottle. I used a Gatorade bottle, 2 balloons, and a pair of scissors, and some adult supervision. Can you guess what each of these parts is going to be on the structure of our respiratory system? Let's start by having an adult help you cut off the bottom of your bottle. Next, take one of the balloons, drop it down into the mouth of the bottle, and fold the edges over. You might need some adult help to make it attach securely. Take your other balloon, cut off just the neck of it, and now we're going to flip this bottle over, and on the open end that you've cut the bottom off, you're going to very carefully stretch the cut balloon over the bottom of your cut off bottle. Again, you might need some adult help to get all of these balloons stretched and tight around these bottles. And there is our simple lung model. I wonder how it works. Let's take a look. All right, friends, let's try out our new lung models. Grabbing the bottom of the bottom balloon and pinching it in between your fingers, this is our diaphragm, and we're going to pull it down to bring air into our balloon. Pulling it down, we inhale, and the balloon gets larger. When we push the bottom of the diaphragm back up into its bowl shape, the balloon deflates. So we inhale, pulling it down, it inflates, and then we exhale, pushing it up, and it deflates. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. So, have you figured out what all of the parts on our model are in the real respiratory system? I bet you know where the diaphragm is. Remember, our diaphragm is this bottom balloon. It's the muscle that's shaped like a bowl that can go in and flat, shape up like a bowl, and flat again like a plate. What's the balloon hanging down inside? If you guessed the lungs, you're correct. The balloon hanging inside of our bottle represents both our left and right lungs. Now, what does the neck of the bottle represent? This opening at the top where the balloon is hanging down through. The front pipe that runs down the front of our throat, the trachea or the windpipe. Great work if you guessed trachea. Finally, what does the bottle represent? The outside plastic bottle. If you guessed the rib cage and the breastbone that goes around our lungs to protect them, then you are correct. The bottle represents the bones or rib cage. The lung is represented by the hanging balloon, the trachea by the neck of the bottle, and the diaphragm muscle by the bottom balloon. So have fun with your new lung model and exploring the respiratory system. Don't forget to check out the link in the description of the video to see more resources to learn even more. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your spring Saturday from the Grimes Public Library.